We begin tonight with new details in a fatal shooting in Minot earlier this month. Prosecutors now charging the suspect with murder after the victim died from his injuries. An arrest warrant filed in district court today charges 30-year-old Quantre Mercier with AA felony murder in the death of 29-year-old Ansu Kamara. Investigators say the victim suffered a gunshot wound to the head in the November 17th shooting in northwest Minot. Prosecutors had originally filed a charge of attempted murder against Mercier, who remains at large. If you know his whereabouts or see him, do not approach. Contact your local law enforcement or Minot police.